Welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit, a platform where we have invited Spirit to share messages, healings, and transmissions with all of us. May this energetic experience help us to expand our awareness and to deepen the relationship we have with our higher self, our spiritual team, and with Source, however we define them. Thank you for being here and for taking part in this amazing journey.
Hey, let's rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll. Let's do it. So welcome back to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit, Season 5. We are in Episode 5, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're in Episode 5, Day 2, middle session of the second day, with Joe Monkman. Joe's been with us in the past, so it's always great to have him back. Really excited to see where we go in this conversation.
Yes. On our coronation day, on our out of a full moon eclipse and Pluto stuff, all sorts of groovy stuff hitting us today and this month. Yeah.
So I will let him introduce himself. For those of you that are with us live, I forgot to double check our voice levels. So let me know if I need to move closer or further away from the mic so that I am aligned with Joe. And so Joe, let me kind of turn it over to you so that you can introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody, Canada and US and elsewhere. So I'm Joe Monkman, and let's see, I never quite know where to start, but I was thinking yesterday after my meditation that nearly 30 years ago, in June of 1993, this work, this spiritual work, shamanic work, channeling work really kicked in for me. Although I'd been getting messages from childhood, I didn't understand them. I didn't understand my relationship with nature and how I would imagine that the wind was talking to me, or the ocean, or animals, and then of course adolescence kind of put the kibosh on all of the sensitivity as I knew it, right? But the sensitivity as a human, as a being, was still there. And then in my later 20s, it all just came, everything erupted. So I started my shamanic journey at that time. My automatic writing started in earnest at that time. A lot of the work I did was for myself. I didn't really bring it out into the public for a good 8 years. So now I've been doing this work all these years, and I continue to see it evolve. I continue to see, of course it has to, because my being is evolving per my blueprint, per the ego getting, wrestled to the ground and thrown out the window over and over again. So I help people really come back to their true nature and get a little more peaceful and quieter in their heart and mind. So that's what we're doing here today. In part, what we're looking at today, what has been coming up a lot is everything seems out of the ordinary, right? Not normal is the new normal. That's my tagline for the year, I think. We've seen so many extraordinary changes politically. We've seen in the United States alone, if you want to learn stuff about what's happening inside you or within the collective consciousness on the planet, take a look at what's been happening socio-politically in the United States. You will get so much information, because all of that old patterning it's cracking open, right? We have the old guard clinging to the old ways as if their life depended on it, and they think it does. And that's what the ego does. The ego thinks that our life depends on keeping the status quo. I was sitting here quietly maybe an hour ago or so, and I wrote down, no more replacing out worn out parts one at a time. The whole mechanism now needs to be upgraded as a whole. It just needs to all come up together. And it is. And it's terrifying our egos, because we know that the normal is not, there's no normal, right? It's everything is not normal. Everything seems upside down. And of course, if we've been woke, if we've been on this chosen enlightenment path, which never ends, right? We know that this is to be expected, but it doesn't necessarily make it any easier. It still can catch us by surprise, right? I don't know if I'm the only one that still gets caught by surprise by some things that, get tossed at my doorstep, but I do still get surprised. But it's the way we are able to navigate it now, right? It's the way we navigate these so-called waves of change and chaos, because chaos is not a bad word. It's actually the norm in the universe. If we look throughout the cosmos, chaos is the way things are, and we should be welcoming the chaos. And if we can learn to welcome the chaos, there'll be a lot more calm in our hearts and in our minds. So, yeah, the other thing that I wrote a while ago is the extraordinary is to be expected. The extraordinary is to be expected. It's like, I think it was Marianne Williamson at some point, maybe it was in, what was her big book? What was her big book? It's right behind me on this table, I swear. Gosh, you know it.
I do know it. I do know it.
Based on A Course in Miracles, right?
Yeah, anyway, she's got a couple big books, but
yes,
yeah.
But the one that put her on the map is based on the Course in Miracles. Well, it all really is. But miracles are, thank you, return to love. Thank you, Sharon. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Return to love, yes. So miracles are the norm, right? It's that we just have conditioned ourselves to think that, oh, if I pray hard enough, something will change. And when it does, we go, it's a miracle, So we forget that sometimes miracles require us surrendering to ourselves. We need to return to love, surrender to love, surrender to what is. This whole thing that Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, Wayne Dyer, all these current and past mystics have talked about being in the present moment. If there is any indication that we need to be present, it is now, right? We need to really hone our skills on being present. The way I look at it is that I could easily spend a third of my time in the past and a third of my time in the future. That only leaves me a third of my energy and common sense and sensitivity here. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of myself that's present, and I really go, oh, Joe, can you just be present? Sometimes when I take my dog to the park in the morning, I absolutely stop and I look at the trees, I touch the trees, I look at the budding flowers, I look at the sky. It's one of the few places in New York City proper that you can look up and there's no buildings obstructing your view, right? In this humongous many-acre park in the middle of New York City. So nature always reminds me to be present, right? And if you are concerned about, well, things shouldn't change, all you need to do is spend time in nature, watch weather, right? It's unpredictable at times, right? Tornado can come in and wipe things out, as they have been interestingly increasing in force and in number in the United States. So weather patterns, they tell us a lot about what's happening. They tell us a lot about ourselves. Everything is designed to help us to be present, to understand that there is no normal. The extraordinary is to be expected. Miracles are commonplace, et cetera, right? So how present would you like to be? It's easy to go, I'm very guilty of this. I really don't want to deal with this right now. I really don't want to look at this. And then we spend years, decades not looking at, not acknowledging, not facing, not feeling. This is the big one, right? Not feeling what we could be feeling that will help us be present. And sometimes it's much easier to just jump over the hurdle than it is to stand in front of the hurdle and go, I can't do it. It's too high. It's going to be too hard. What if I trip? Blah, blah, blah. We spend an exorbitant amount of time over analyzing the hurdle rather than just jumping. Right. So
Can I add something in here?
I think I just answered a question that I had for myself earlier. That's the way it is. Go ahead, Dan.
So Sandra says, you're speaking my language, the understanding of all that can be.
Yeah,
absolutely agree with you, Sandra. So when you're talking about being present, I start giggling because Sarah Landon is one of the people that I listen to regularly. She's been on the show, and I'm hoping that she'll come back next season if we can coordinate schedules. But anyway, the council, which is the collective that channels through her, recently started talking about how our journey is to go nowhere. Our journey is to go now, here. And I went, oof, like my head just imploded. And I went, holy shit, I love that. I love that our journey is to go now, here. It's not about going somewhere. It's not about anything else. So it's about going nowhere. Our journey is to go nowhere, to go now, here. And I love that sound, the word play.
Yes.
Is so much fun. So I wanted to add that in because it's a reminder for me as well. It's a reminder for me as well because I get so caught up in stuff as well. And so having that fun little wordplay, because it so resonated with me, it's so present in my mind that it's easy for me to pull it out, to remind me. My journey is to go now, here. Let's go. Let's get back, and then get back into my present, take some conscious breaths, recognize who I am. And all of a sudden, everything changes. My perception of everything then becomes different, and everything just kind of quiets down, settles down. I open up, and it's just such a different experience of before I was now here.
Yeah. So, years ago, my guides posed the question of what would you do if you were living with an uncluttered heart? An uncluttered heart. Meaning you didn't have all of those, sometimes when I think about this today, I think of if we were, if every word, negative word or something we took in, we twisted it and, made it negative, whatever. If they were just Post-its and we stuck them all over ourselves, we'd probably be, those Post-its would probably suffocate us, bury us, weigh us down, crush us, right? Because we would be so cluttered with all these Post-it notes stuck on us. I also would say, and this is a little more extreme, I would say to clients, like, if I had at times in my life a little knife that I took and nicked myself with every nasty thing I said about myself, I would be scarred beyond recognition. And I lived in that place for a long, long time, up until 30 years ago when, this thing exploded in me. And I still have to deal with my negative thoughts. There's often situations that I'm in and I really have to check myself, or I have to hear myself. This is just my process. I have to hear myself talk about the garbage in my head. I have to hear it out loud. So it's like I'm the witness to the egoic chatter and the despair, whatever it is, so I can begin to make the change, right?
It's like what you were talking about with regards to the politics that things are coming up to the surface so that they can be resolved, changed, allowed to release, to let go. And so part of our spiritual journey is awakening to the chatter that we have so that we can learn to have a different conversation. And
yeah, you know, I used to several years ago, Marianne Williamson would speak every Tuesday in Manhattan, and then I would see her in Beverly Hills as well when I was out there. But she once said something that I went, oh. She said, the ego wants to kill you. The ego just wants to destroy you. And that to me was like, it just really shook me and woke me up in that moment. I needed that message in that way, you know, in that way. Just like when my teacher Rosa would say things to me that were so harsh, you know, if someone else were listening in, you know, and some people were, because I would do this in group setting, she would say things like, oh, Joe, shut the F up. And it would just shock me into, it would wake me up. She knew exactly what to say in exactly the right tone at exactly the right moment. It was like, if any of you are familiar with the work of Carlos Castaneda, you know, his teacher, Don Juan, would whack him on the back to shift his awareness, to move him into another reality, right? So it was like that. You know, we don't often need to be whacked on the back or need to be said, shut the F up. But you know, when she would say, shut the F up, it was done with such ruthless compassion that I had no choice but to surrender, right? Because it was just spirit speaking through her in such a way that spirit knew that that would get my attention and just make me stop. It was like picking me up and spinning me 360. Did you want to say something, Daniel?
Are you still in the idea that the ego is trying to kill you?
And no, but the ego, to me, that means that the ego is trying to keep you in the familiar. It doesn't want you to go out, experience the extraordinary. It wants you to remain in what is familiar to you, right? And in that case, it could kill your spirit. It could dampen your light. It could do those things. I don't know if I would, you know, I liked what Marianne Williamson said at that moment, and I do think there's a relevance to that, and I do think we should pay attention, right? She was saying, pay attention, right? She was saying, pay attention to your ego because it will confine you, it will imprison you, you think you want to be doing this stuff, but you don't jump that hurdle, you don't, you know, push the lid of the box, you don't turn the dimmer switch up full, because of the way the mind, the egoic mind, is chattering on with the same stories over and over again, right? Byron Katie would say something like, you're never thinking an original thought. All your thoughts are recycled, you know? So.
Can I play with this a little bit and kind of challenge it a little bit?
Please.
So I mentioned this in the last session. So for those of you that were in the last session, I apologize for repeating myself. But a long time ago, I started recognizing, I don't like using the word ego because it's oftentimes associated with a lot of negativity of, you know, the ego's trying to kill you is an example of that. It's just like my mind just instantly goes, oh my God, that is so far from my experience. I don't want to accept that. And so I started noticing that people would talk about the ego and then they would talk about how they experience things. And I started noticing that people are really referring to their human experience.
Often, yeah.
And so I stopped referring to our ego and I started referring to it as our human experience, our human journey, our experience as being human. And there's elements where I agree with what you're saying, that because our human is so accustomed to certain ways of living, because we've been taught this, that this is what our human experience means. We've learned this, and so this is how we define our human experience, the limitations of the human experience. And our human is designed for survival. So anything outside of that, it's going to want to protect itself. It is a natural defense of our survival. And so I say this lovingly to invite us to look at our defenses in a more loving space, in a more judgment-free space, where this is the design of our human that is looking to protect ourselves. Now, I love the idea of, as we expand spiritually, bring the human along. I love that idea.
And help that.
Right?
And help it do that.
Exactly. And you cannot grow spiritually if you're villaining your human. You cannot grow spiritually if you're defiling the human experience. They don't go hand in hand. And so the idea of our ego, looking at ego, language that we use that challenges the role of the ego in a negative way, or even identifies the ego in a negative way, for me is just that invitation of separation. And so I try to describe it and discuss it in a way where my quote unquote ego is just my beautiful human trying to do the best that it can. And for me, having this human experience, both as spirit and human in a symbiotic relationship, it's about finding the balance between the two so that one can help the other without one running away from the other. Because it's very easy for our spirit self to be like, oh, the body is a pain body. That's another term that gets me. This is not a pain body. Yes, I can feel pain in it, but I don't want to refer to my human experience as pain. I don't want to reference this beautiful body that is incredibly capable of experiencing emotions and even sorrow. I don't want to refer to it as pain. That just doesn't align with me. And I just lost Joe. Joe just popped away. So anyway, so while Joe comes back, if you guys want to, raise your hands or contribute something, share something, go ahead, Sandra.
I'm just loving this conversation because I'm reading a book. Is it okay to mention the title of the book?
Of course.
The Untethered Soul. I think Michael Singer has written it. And it was really interesting because I read a chapter and I got really hung up on what it said, and I put it down for quite a few months. And then I picked it up recently, and it's just like so in alignment with what you guys are essentially talking about that awareness and the focus and like the question of who am I? I just can feel the power of what you're saying in that I cannot abuse this body. It's even like swearing. I can't even swear as much as I used to because I'm so, and I don't like to say I'm so spiritual now, but it is. It's because of the way who I am now. I can no longer do that anymore. Well, it's not a part of me.
It doesn't make sense for you to use that same language because the language that you're living in has shifted. I still swear. I do. Not a lot, but when it comes out, it comes out. But I understand what you're saying, that as your awareness has expanded, the language that you utilize to reference your life has shifted. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful place to be. That's amazing. Welcome back, Joe.
Yes, welcome back. Listening, and everyone's frozen, and I'm like, I can still hear everybody, but anyway, I guess I'm back. Thank you. So to pick up on what you were saying, it's really the conditioned mind, you can call it that, the conditioned mind that repeats the stories and creates myths about our lives that holds us hostage to our, doesn't let us experience the joys that we might want to experience. And, I gave a presentation on integrity at the office the other day. And I was talking about Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. So Gary V is an American entrepreneur, marketing guru. And he's from New Jersey, and he got famous when he started to use social media to promote his family's wine business. And now he teaches entrepreneurs, and he's very focused on Gen Zers to help them kind of break the mold of, okay, you're not interested in going to college. You don't want to go to college. Things are different than they were. For my generation, he's in his late 40s, I think maybe 50. So he helps them to see that they can make money doing a multitude of things. He's very inspiring. And what he's very famous for is using the F word repeatedly, and has turned down speaking gigs that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars because they have asked him to not speak like that. And his thing is, this is innately who I am right now. And I've tried not to be that person, and it hurts. So this is the way I'm built, and I speak like this. And for him, it works, right? But
Yeah, I love that.
You're saying, Sandra, it's when our vibration changes, when our perspective changes, our language can change along with it. We are no longer comfortable saying things in a certain way, certainly with the same tone we did, because our anger isn't there anymore, our resentments aren't the same, our jealousies, etc. So and the stories are not the same. The conditioned mind becomes deconditioned, unconditioned. It's like, we can start to write a brand new story from a new place, and it doesn't include certain vocabulary. It doesn't include certain people, jobs, where we are geographically could change because of all of this. So yeah, I think that's a very powerful thing that you were saying about your languaging has changed.
Now, speaking of language changing, for those that are with us live, did you notice the change in Joe's energy when he referred to the same conversation as the conditioned mind? Did you notice that his energy was different? The presentation of what he was saying was softer, more gentle, more accepting even of himself, when he just shifted that language of the ego versus a conditioned mind. What he was referring to as the ego was talking about the conditioned mind, but there was a completely different point of view and perspective. It was like an acceptance and appreciation of the conditioned mind with acceptance as opposed to judgment, whereas the ego was a judgment. And I felt that he said the exact same thing, almost word for word, but he used conditioned mind instead. And the feeling was very soft, was very gentle, was very forgiving. And so I'm highlighting this on purpose, not only for Joe's benefit, but also for everybody that's listening. The language that we use towards ourselves does have an influence on the energy that we are playing with, that we are inviting, that we are associating with, that we are utilizing to create our experience. And so one of the things that I'm missing his name right now. One of the speakers last season called me up on something that I had said, where he said, Daniel, be very impeccable with your language. And it really kind of caught me. I recognized what he was talking about. And I still talk about how I feel like I am learning this process very slowly at certain levels, which is frustrating to me. And I'm learning, and I recognize his comment that by me saying that, I am perpetuating that perception. And so the idea of being impeccable with our language is something that I just wanted to kind of bring up again, but do it gently. So when he talked about being impeccable with language, I brought up the idea that at the same time, there's no judgment. So don't get caught up on being judgmental of myself again. I can't do that anymore. Or, I use the word ego again, and that's such a negative word. And that's not what I'm inviting us to play with at all. But it's just playing with recognizing the language that we use does have an influence on our emotions, our feelings, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the world around us. And so I use language very interestingly as a mirror to understand where the person's coming from. Where are they where's their level of consciousness in that moment that they chose that word to use versus another word. And so that's part of the invitation here.
There's also, for some people, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V's, the way he presents information and the language and the tone he uses, it's not going to match certain people. Other people are going to need a completely different approach to the way he's talking about marketing and being yourself and not dimming your light, et cetera, right? A few months ago, I started on YouTube, these ads started popping up. A big name in the personal development field. And I stopped because I thought, why is he introducing this whole thing and roping people in through fear? And I was just washing the dishes, I was just doing normal things with this in the background. And I heard it multiple times over the next few weeks. And every time, as soon as it started, I had to stop it because I thought, I don't, even though I've listened to this person in the past and I've read books by this person, the messaging he's putting out in this moment is not connecting with me from that fear-based place. The way I was hearing it was like, I think some of the words he was choosing was the economy is a disaster, and people are mad about this, and blah 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 blah, and our politicians are letting us down. And it was like, okay, that's one reality, right? Do I want to step into his reality? No. Do I want a different kind of approach? Yes. Right now, that's what's working for me, a different kind of approach, right? So, and also as a presenter, you can read the room, change the language to help match the circumstances, right? So if I start off in one direction, I can certainly go in another direction if I feel like it's appropriate. So yes, but and languaging is important because, what ultimately comes back to what are we telling ourselves and what's the repetition of the stories and does it feel good? And sometimes we don't even recognize that we're in a repetitive story until we recognize that we're in a repetitive story and it's not serving us anymore, right? It's not serving us, and, as far as that judgment thing, people do things, I'm sure that, we've all in one way had this that we don't agree with, right? We just don't agree with it. But then we have to step back and it's like, it's really none of my business. That helped me resolve a long-standing thing that was really rubbing, in my family. It was really a bone of contention with something. And I just went, there's nothing I can do about this. I just let it all go. And years later, there's been a beautiful resolution to that, that friction relationship. And it was just letting it go. It was just letting my story about it go, letting my siblings' stories go about it, not engaging the story anymore and just saying, this is how this other person is, and I can't change that person. None of us can. This is a long, ongoing pattern of behavior. Do we want to get involved with it? Yes or no? I choose no right now. And then it changed. I think once we all surrendered to it, because it happened simultaneously within all of us, because of my father's death, actually, back in December, that it just, right? Everything changes. It has to if you let go of the rope. Yeah. True, Sharon. True.
Yeah. So it's like a tug of war, Sharon says. If you let go of the rope, you can't play the game. And, Joe, you were talking about, I listened to a lot of online marketing gurus. And a lot of the idea within the marketing world is bring out the person's pain points and then tell them that you can help them resolve it. Bring out the pain in them and then tell them, I can help you. And that's never resonated with me. And I really, I've had people work on my websites and look at my messaging and say, you need to talk more about people's pain. And I'm like, I don't want to go there. Like I would rather talk about your highs. Do you want to live a better life? Do you want to live a life of joy and in peace? That's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about you live a painful life and there's another way to do it. It just doesn't resonate with me. But there's a comment that was made that I would like to kind of get to. Is there something you wanted to add, Joe?
No, go ahead.
So Cheryl asks, I understand what you're saying about the language thing you're talking about. Doesn't spirit, for lack of another word, know exactly what we mean? Not with another human, I get that, but in the spiritual world.
I agree, yes. It's my belief is that God, spirit, the universe, yes, they know, our guides know exactly. And, sometimes we, because we're human and we're on this earth playground, earth school, we have to get it in ourselves in a way that feels right for us, that aligns with who we are evolving into. It's like we're just growing all the time. I would be so foolish if I tried to put a shoe on that I had when I was 10 years old. It's never going to fit me. It's never going to fit me. I've outgrown it, right? My foot is way too big for that 10-year-old boy's foot. However, some of the things that I conditioned my mind from when I was 10 years old, they still may be lingering, right? And spirit may be giving me hints all the time, like, from when you were 10 years old, 9 years old, you might want to, Sharon's word, let go of the rope. You might want to put on a new pair of shoes, because those shoes that you're trying to wear from age 10 till age 57, they're not comfortable. And spirit is always going to talk your language. Spirit is always going to show up in the form with the words and everything that you need to get it, right? So if you're trying to learn about marketing and you decide that you don't want to use fear as a manipulation tool to get people to buy your product, then that's your thing. Then please do that, right? Please do that. 10, 11 years ago, I went through this period of my life really felt like it was falling apart. I was in California and nothing was working the way it used to when I was in New York. It was just, everything was, and it took me a good year to realize what was happening. And when I did, I just went, wait, I'm working with all these people as clients who really, they expect me to do the work for them. They're really not wanting to go any further. And it was sad for me at that time to realize that those people were just coming with the same stories over and over again, maybe different names, different things. And I would say, okay, here, we go through a whole process with shamanic healing. And then, spirit would come through and say, we suggest and invite you to do this in between until your next session, blah, blah, blah. And they would come back and I would say, did you do those things? No, I did nothing. Can you just take this off of me? Right? I let all of those people go. It was a good chunk of business. I just said, I have evolved in a way that, that business model doesn't suit me anymore, right? That it just doesn't suit me. So, look at how fast we're evolving from 6 months ago, from the turn of the year, look what's happened, planetarily, just the first quarter of this year. It's extraordinary what is going on and how fast we're, one thing that getting back to, and I'm really going around here, who was it that had that question or was posing that?
Cheryl.
Okay. It just went out of my head. Oh, years ago in a channeling, you know, my guides came through and said, every thought is a prayer. So what are you praying for? Because if we're thinking along the lines of, you know, thoughts are things, I think that's a Buddha quote that's always on the internet. I don't even know if Buddha said that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Thoughts become things is another one.
Things, right? So we can look at what we're thinking about, what our predominant thinking is, and seeing how our life is. You know, but also we have to remember we don't really know truly what our blueprint is, and this is where that whole conditioned mind / ego, I really think that the conditioned mind does serve a purpose because it can push us back and forth onto our soul path, right? Because there's this free will aspect going on here on the planet with humans. So I think that the quote unquote ego is designed to help us to support the soul's blueprint. And it's the kind of understanding and being a little more malleable in our way of being that we can allow the soul's blueprint to float up in us and see how the conditioned mind is keeping us away from the joy and all that stuff. And look, you know, on this human path, every day is not, you know, rainbows and unicorns, right? We get angry, we get frustrated, we get sad, we have these thoughts that create emotions that spur an action and reaction, whatever. So as we evolve, we're always learning more to how to be with the thoughts and how to be with the emotions and how our body is, or how our physicality is affected by those things. Did I even answer that? I don't even know.
So hopefully that's been helpful, Cheryl. Feel free to kind of put a note there. What I want to add to this is that language has a vibration to it. All language, all words have a vibration to it. And if you're not familiar with the work of, I forget his name, he's a Japanese researcher who froze ice crystals in relation to water that had been placed in different words. So, you know, they put a word on a bottle and inside the bottle was water, and then they froze that water in crystals, and the different words associated to the different water crystals had different shapes. And you can see that the loving words had these beautiful crystalline shapes to it, where the negative, angry words were more kind of blocks of ice that didn't have this beautiful, flowery, expansive visual representation. So the words that we use they carry with them a vibration. And again, I'm not, you know, I don't want you to get into being a word police, because that takes a lot of energy and thought, and that's not what the invitation is. It's just being aware, having more awareness of how we are engaging with ourselves, how we are engaging with life, and language is one reflection of that I happen to be very sensitive to. I notice language, I look for language. So when people say things, it shows me the level that they're at, because they chose that word unconsciously or consciously, whatever the case may be. And so I use language often to kind of get a feel for where people are and where I am as well. So hopefully that's helpful, Cheryl. Kelly makes a comment here that I also want to share, which is, the more intuitive we become, we see what is authentic and genuine. Former teachers and mentors are falling away from me, and I no longer resonate with them. And I had that experience in martial arts, where I was in a particular school of martial arts where I learned enough to recognize that that's not the school that I wanted to be in. Ironically, they taught me enough to know that what they were teaching wasn't good for me. It didn't resonate with me. I wanted something different. And so that's very true. You know, as we grow and as we expand, things that resonated with us no longer resonate with us. Teachers that we listened to, when we listened back to them, were like, what did I hear in that before? Well, what we heard in before is what we needed to hear at that time, and we resonated with it. It was powerful for us. And we shift and we evolve, and it's no judgment. If that teacher is still teaching what they're teaching, there's no judgment, because there's people at that level that need to hear that, which is then going to allow them to learn what they are looking to learn. So there's no judgment in any of this, regardless of language that you use or teachers that you're following or whatever.
Or, guides that come in and then you don't hear from those guides for a while because, you got what you needed from them, right? So, and Yogananda Paramahansa, Autobiography of a Yogi. Do you know how many times I tried to read that book? For years. I mean, I had copies I had the audio, I had cassettes of it, or something like that. I could not get it. Didn't resonate. I moved to California. I'm living in Encinitas, where his hermitage is. One of the first times that I go to the gardens of this hermitage to meditate, I'm sitting there, and it's beautiful space that overlooks the Pacific Ocean on this cliff in Encinitas, which is northern San Diego County. And I feel a hand on my shoulder, and I open my eyes and I look, and there's no one there. And I said, "Who is that?" And I hear, "It is me, my child, Yogananda." Ever since then, he comes through in my private meditations and writing and in group channelings, because his message is often has to do with something about moving, because he always reminds me of his journey from India to the United States, which he did not truly want to do. He did not want to come here, right? But his path was to help bring this yogic philosophy to the West, right? It was like the Dalai Lama, perhaps if the Dalai Lama never left Tibet, we wouldn't have a relationship with Buddhism that we have, right? So these things that seem extraordinary, events that are happening around the world that seem extraordinary and tumultuous, and we don't know why they're really happening, right? We don't know the karma of the people involved, et cetera, et cetera. We don't always know the bigger lesson until we do, and sometimes we just don't, because we're not meant to. It's not for our evolution. So yeah. I did a group on Tuesday night. I have a Tuesday night Spirit Messages group. One of the things that came through that I wrote down to share today as well is that this month in particular is designed for potently powerful and positive energetic shifts that help us to remember that the extraordinary is to be expected and not normal is the new normal. So if we look for these opportunities to have these energetic shifts, and sometimes they're going to feel good, and sometimes we might feel resistance to them, but they are designed to be potently powerful and positive, short and long term. So good thing to remember. Sometimes, when I was in school for polarity therapy back in the late 90s, I went to school for the certification program over 3 years. And our instructor would always say, it's give a session, get a session, right? You may be doing the body work on someone and deep listening. You're really listening to the way the body is talking and the way your hands are talking to that body. But you're always getting something, right? There's an energetic exchange all the time. So when I do my channeling, or I come on something like this, it's always give a session, get a session, right? We're all exchanging information through words, right? And we're always exchanging something. There's always an exchange going on. So when I do those channelings, sometimes I don't remember what came through. Unless I get the messages beforehand and I write certain things down, like maybe I write an outline, or there's 3 words or a phrase, or multiple phrases that I hear to write down for myself mostly, but also to share with the group. But this is one of them, right? And this is a reminder to keep us out of the negative loop as best we can. The potently powerful and positive energetic shifts are happening, and they're happening like, I'm just getting an image of tornadoes, like a wall of tornadoes coming and clearing out. Back in the fall, I don't know if I talked about it back in November, but I guess it started intensely for me in September of last year, Daniel. I was getting messages that there was going to be an energetic drop in the springtime on the planet. And I saw the energy like a launching. It came off of the launching pad on December 3rd of last year. I just saw jump off and into right around the equinox in March. And then in the new year, I started listening to all these astrologers who were talking about these planetary shifts and these changes. And they were all noting that it was going to be very powerful around the equinox, right? And this was also when I was hearing that May of 2023 was going to be likely the most powerful, important month of 2023. So all this to say, please pay attention when you get messages from your guides. Please pay attention when the hawks fly repeatedly, or the falcons and the crows and the snakes, and you're having dreams that are, and daytime visions, because they're all designed, everything is designed to give you a little reminder from my experience, right? It's all designed to help keep you on track. And at the same time, there's really no going off track. So
I'm prompted to share something which is came from Maitland. Maitland is a guide that channels through Jamie Butler, and she also channels through my friends. And those of you that have been on my journey here in CSVS, Maitland came forward with Kiara the first time that she channeled a few seasons back. So Maitland, when we were starting all of these big energy shifts and the changes on the planet, this was kind of beginning of last year, she encouraged us to remember that being aware of the fact that we're playing in a lot of energy, just that awareness in and of itself allows us to not freak out with it, to not get attached to it and engage with it in a way that a lot of people are engaging unknowingly because they're not aware of it. So being aware that we're playing in a lot of energy just in and of itself allows us to have a different relationship with the energy, with the tornadoes. Cheryl says that she feels the tornado stuff. So if you know that the tornadoes are there to bring stuff up so that it can be resolved, you have a very different relationship with that tornado than if you think that tornadoes there being destructive. And so, we have, one of the beauties of these conversations is to let people know and remind them that there are a lot of changes that are happening planetarily. And it's amazing to think about where we're going and how far we've come already. And to recognize that, this transition, we're still in the transition. There's still energies of the old that are fighting to hold on to their beliefs. And Joe mentioned this beautifully as a metaphor of looking at the government systems, where the old ideas, the people that live in those old ideas are, getting very vocal because they're like, no, this needs to be this way because this is the way it's always been. And I can't deal with the change. And, whereas others are coming in with a very different point of view and perspective that are challenging that. And if you look at the old paradigm of how we've lived, going into the new paradigm of how we are learning to live, we're still in that transition point, which is very exciting to be in, to be honest with you. I feel the excitement of it, the power of it, the honor of being part of that shift is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we've all chosen to be here now. No, it's no mistake. Right? Here we are. And I wonder sometimes, and sometimes with groups, I do shamanic journey, drumming journeys to the future. So we can see 100, 600, 900 years out. I used to do this when we would go to Peru, and we'd be in these concentric circles in Morai and elsewhere in the Sacred Valley in Peru. So we can, start to really source from the future and see if we can bring information, keys back from the future to help with the now. So when I've worked with business people and they're looking for solutions, right, to their problems, and they're like, well, we're working on this project, blah, 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 blah. I say, well, let's go to the finished project, right? Let's go and ask questions of the finished project about how we got from point A to B and all of these in-between things. How did we resolve this where we are now? How did we resolve it? What's the easiest way? So you can always go into your future self, or have your guides take you into the future and get some information from the future, because your ancestors are living there now, and your consciousness is everywhere. So you might as well go and source from the consciousness that you are, that's 600 years into the future. Yes, Dr. Phil, what the hell were we thinking? It's true, but we can do that all the time. That's actually a good, that I actually really like that. What the hell was I thinking? Because it forces us, if we're aware, we can go, what was I thinking? Because it certainly put me here, or I've been, crying all day because of my thinking, So
there's a couple things that I want to share.
Yes.
I was recently, go ahead.
Oh, so this is what we have until half past the hour?
Yeah, we do. Okay.
So I wonder if I can do a channeling from the future and to bring some information from the future if you want, and we'll
that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Just really quickly then, let me just kind of share a couple of things. Lately, I've been leaning into something that Spirit shared with me. You are already that which you are becoming. And I love that invitation. You already are that which you are becoming. And so that's something that I'm really resonating with. And just last week, I was again invited through another teacher that I work with, or another speaker that I listen to. They were talking about exactly this idea. Go into your future self and ask them to share with you something that's relevant for you today. So you can connect with this future self of you. Play with the idea that there is no time. You exist in the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. And so utilize that, play with that, So go ahead, Joe.
That's good information. Because I've been my mind will say things like, this is going to last forever. And we forget that everything is temporary, right? We forget that, and there's actually no future, no past. There's only this moment, and there's only now, and there's only now, and that's gone. That moment's gone. It's never to be repeated. As much as our mind might say this is continuing on, it's not. Meanwhile, bees are out there, birds are out there, and we're missing all of these beautiful things because we're like spinning in our very creative ways.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to say,
we are nothing if endlessly creative in our ways to deal with things.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to say, which is in reference to this comment about, what the hell were we thinking? I hear a lot of people say, I'm never going to come back to being human again. What the hell was I thinking coming back in here? This is hell, you know, and all of these things. And I laugh because, again, recently, about a month ago, spirit channeling through a friend of mine made a comment about how when we cross over and we go back to the other side, it's those challenges that we look back with glee and pleasure and joy. And it's the challenges that we love. It's the challenge that brings us back into this form, that has brought us back into this form historically, that's changing, which is really exciting to think about. Because a lot of the things that society talks about, that spirituality conversations talk about, is this idea that, oh, we're human, we're going to struggle, it's normal to be struggling and to have, you know, these, you know, bad days and good days. And, you know, I went through a lot of that in the last 10 years. What's really exciting is the people that I listen to are talking about that differently. And more importantly, I am seeing the difference. So what they're talking about is everything is shifting upwards. So we are still going to fluctuate. That's going to be a natural part of our experience. But the range of our fluctuation is going to go from being calm, being at ease, being at peace, to being excited, being in joy, being exuberant, to then being at calm, being at peace, being at ease, to being joyful, being playful, being excited, to being at ease, being calm, being quiet, being present, to getting engaged and excited, to being calm. So everything is shifting. So we are still going to fluctuate, but the idea that our human experience is always going to live in anger, I no longer accept that. That is no longer my possibility. That is no longer my reality. I personally still fall into traps of anger with my mother, and I talk about that all the time. So I'm not there yet, but I know that that is where I am, that I know that that's what I'm becoming. And I know that that's possible for me. I know that as a human, not only did I choose this experience because of all of the emotions that this human experience offers, which is incredibly powerful, and it's such a gift, and it's so beautiful. Think about the beauty that exists in anger and in sorrow and in depression. There's an incredible intensity of emotion that cannot be expressed and felt in any other way than those experiences. And so think about how amazing it is to have the ability to feel depression. And more importantly, to recognize that that's not who you are and it doesn't define you, and you can allow yourself to ascend back to your state of natural well-being and perfect mental health, because that's who you are. And so this idea that, you know, we have the ups and downs of our humanity, I absolutely agree with you. But I love the invitation that I'm hearing from the council and Sarah Landon and others that I listen to as well. But specifically, the council talks about how the lower part of our range is going to be peaceful, calm, and at ease. That's exciting. To even think about the possibility that the lower part of my human range is going to be peace and calm and tranquility. And so really, really just want to, you know, kind of highlight a couple of those points. But we chose this experience to be here. You know, interestingly enough, again, the last 2 weeks, the number of times that I've heard a channeled spirit talk about how we are here because we were selected to be here. We were chosen to be here. Of everybody that volunteered to come down, there was a selection process to identify who was going to be best suited to be here present. And we won that. We won that ability. We won that experience. We are the lottery winners to be present. Think about this. The shift that we are going through energetically from how Earth was 10 years ago to where Earth is going to be 10 years from now is never going to happen again. It is never going to happen again. And so we have the honor to be not only part of that, but to consciously experience and to be aware of and involved in making this shift happen. I mean, that's just powerful to even think about. I mean, it's just so amazing to think about that. So
it's very humbling to me.
Yeah. So what the hell were we thinking? We were thinking this was going to be amazing. And that's what we were thinking.
And, we weren't thinking from the human, as a human, we were thinking as an extension of source energy. So, always from the perspective of evolving as a soul and evolving as the whole, right? So, yeah. Good point.
So I would love, you offered to kind of, channel the future. I would love to have you do that if it feels like it's a good place for you to do that.
Yes. And I also want to tell you that my cats are starting to become very active right now. I don't know.
All right.
My cats, they're chatty right now. So
they want to get involved. They're more than welcome.
They want to get involved.
They can be chatty all they want.
The gray cat came through already, but he's the chattier one. And now the female her eye is like right behind the computer, like.
For those of you that are listening, you probably already know that animals love playing in this energy. And so
yes, they do.
As we've expanded our energy to have these conversations, the animals they love playing in that space. They love playing in that more expansive energy. And so a lot of times you'll notice that, dogs and cats and, are nearby. They like being in the space. So anyway.
Okay. So as long as the one cat who's now rubbing up against the key light doesn't knock the light over. Okay, let's see what Spirit has to say. I've been hearing for about 40 minutes. I work with a group of guides who identified themselves many years ago. They're a collective called At One. So I think that's who's going to come through to talk to us from that quote unquote future place. So when I first started working with this energy, they told me that they were the ones from my childhood that would always pop in, But when I had an experience on June 4th of 1993 in a full moon meditation lying outside, and my body started shaking uncontrollably, and I couldn't speak, I couldn't open my eyes, and my body started, all but my sacrum was coming off the ground, and I was terrified and excited. And it was their voice that I heard to start telling me about how to use my breath to slow things down so that my body would gently come back to the ground. And the way they always start things is by saying, welcome, 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 welcome. You are welcome. Not from the thank you, you're welcome kind of place, but to acknowledge that, getting back to what Daniel was saying, you're welcome here. This is the place you're meant to be. This is the time you're meant to be here. This is the way you are meant to be here. There is no other form that you could have assumed that would have the same impact as it does now. And you don't have to be the president of a country. You don't have to be a king or a queen or a billionaire or a technology leader or anything like the Kardashians or anything like that. You just being you is the perfect you that you could be. And it doesn't matter in those moments when you think your vibration is lower because you're angry or you're sad or you're out of sorts in any way. You are moving in the energy that you need to be in to know yourself. So that's why we always say you are welcome, you are welcome, you are welcome, because so many human beings don't feel welcome on the planet. And they have forgotten that they said, I want to go to Earth and have an experience in human form so I can learn to evolve from that place. So as we move forward into the future, and we are just going to say that it's the future. We're not going to say it's 2024 or 2150 or 3000 something. We're just going to say the future, even though that place does not exist. We're going to pull information from the Akashic records, from the places that are known to hold information. And all we're going to do is to turn a switch on in all of you so you are remembered. So you are remembered. So you begin to understand your brilliance. You begin to understand your light. You begin to understand how extraordinary you are. Extraordinary. Because so many human beings have conditioned themselves to think that they are just, we have always said that you are extraordinary. And our job remains to remind you that you are extraordinary. So just a little bit from the future. Give us a moment. We're going to read the files and pull out some information. So thanks to you, there is a wave of peace on the planet that never existed before. Imagine that there is a wave of peace on the planet that never existed before. And it only exists there because it exists here. It only exists there because it exists here. It only exists there because it exists here. So you're projecting your thoughts, your being, your energy, your light, your peacefulness, your positivity, your potency, your power into the future. It's like you're putting an extension cord into your heart and you're plugging it in to the future. And you are sending your radiant light, your beautiful heartbeats out into the future. And all it is sending love, joy, peace, all of those positive words into the future. So if you want to experience the future, be here now. If you want to experience the future, be here now. If you want to experience the future, be here now. If you want to experience the future, be here now. And that's the message. Okay.
You made me think of a couple things. And I've lost them. But I love the idea, the reminder. There it is. Thank you. I love the idea and the reminder that we are extraordinary. But again, playing with language. And one of the people that I've spent years listening to and learning myself through what he said and how he said it. One of the things that he talked a lot about was recognize how amazing it is to be ordinary. Just be yourself. So it's interesting that that's what came to me when the idea of we are extraordinary Being extraordinary comes in recognizing that we are extraordinary. Being ordinary is powerful. Being ordinary is recognizing that you are everything that you already are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to become Superman or Wonder Woman. You being ordinary is already super.
Mm-hmm.
You being yourself is already super. It's already extraordinary. And so that's what came to me with the way that they presented extraordinary. I instantly felt the power of recognizing the power in ordinary. Being just ordinary isn't ordinary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I like about these guides is that they always remind me of that. Like, you are welcome here. You're perfect the way you are. Nothing is ever wrong. Nothing has ever been wrong with you or the planet or anyone else. Everything is in perfect order. And I find that very humbling every time the energy comes through. It just brings me back. It brings me back. It brings me back. And it helps get me out of the mishigosh that sometimes erupts in my head. Like in the morning, I don't like to get out of bed until I check in with myself. How's my breathing? How does my physical body feel? Do I have any aches and pains? How am I feeling emotionally? Where are my thoughts? What is the thought that woke me up? Am I waking up from a dream? Am I waking up and immediately going, oh, this thing at work, or, something like that? I want to check in because I don't want to put my feet on the floor with anything that might be disruptive, right? And it doesn't mean that I might not take 2 steps and my mind explodes into, some like, but I want to know that at least in that moment, sit up, feet go on the floor, I stand up, I feel the floor, I feel my body. Okay. I'm working on every morning when I wake up to be aware that I'm here. Because where else am I? I don't know. As far as I know, I'm only here. Right? Nowhere else I might be, but I think I'm here. So, yeah.
So there's a couple of things that came to my mind which have disappeared. And I share this because if they come back, and that's okay. Thank the collective for coming in for us, Joe.
Mm-hmm. I just had this thought that like a Star Wars kind of group of beings called the Thought Chasers, or maybe it's the it's the Thought Chasers. They're the ones that are in charge of tracking down your lost thoughts or something and returning them to you, and you can go, no, I'd rather not have that back thing.
So if you want to work with Joe, I would love to have Joe talk to us a little bit more about his shamanic journeys, because he's offering the listeners of season 5 a discounted rate of working and of having a shamanic journey remotely online. So I'd love to have him talk to you more about what that is.
So this is different than what I did with Sharon. And Sharon, again, I apologize. I have lost all these Zoom files are totally gone. I don't know where any of that went. Last year, that whole period is such a blur, because I was in my father's death throe there for 2 months. So I apologize that I've looked through those files. I'm like, there's a whole gap in time where the files that I recorded are not there. It's the most bizarro thing. It's the most bizarro thing. Anyway, so I do a number of things. And one of the things that I do is I work with spirit to collaborate on helping people with something that is on the cutting edge for them. So maybe it's, if you were to ask me for now, it's like my full-time job. It's like, I feel so overwhelmed with my full-time job at times that I have someone that I go to help process the thoughts and feelings that come up about this job, because it's showing me that there's divergent paths coming here, that I have an opportunity to go one way or stay, and this is like, but this familiar is not, I feel like it's too small a path now. This path over here feels wild and like unknown, and it's drawing me in, and I'm a little like, ooh, what, here we go again. So I have someone who is supporting me, who takes me into my body, who helps me do visualization so I can see, recognize what's happening inside me, helps me call my guides and brings her guides forward. Sometimes she'll drum for me on Zoom, so I can start to shift the brainwave patterns a little bit more. I don't need that as much as I used to, but so that's how I work. We work in the chakras. We work, if there's something going on in a part of the body that's been, pained, we can go there. We definitely work with my guides and your guides. One of the things that I love to do is, even with people who have never had the experience of working with guides, they come through for them, and they can see them, they can sense them, they can know that they're there. Sometimes it's an ancestor, sometimes it's a power animal. I've done a lot of power animal retrieval work with people. So we spend an hour on Zoom. I've done a lot of Zoom work in the last few years, thank you, COVID, and a lot of work over the phone. I have clients that I've never met in person because they're either not in the United States, or they're on the other side of the United States, or they're in Canada. I've actually had a client in Toronto for many, many years now, and I've met her once in person when she came to New York for a business thing. So, so we take the hour to go deeper with spirit, to get some resolution. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And so if people are interested in reaching out to you, what's the easiest way?
I'm going to type my email, because that's the best way. And I know you might not agree with that, Daniel, because
I just don't like posting the email on websites because of the robots that come in and then use your email for spam and various other things. So I try not to put emails on websites, but verbally, I'm happy to share it for people that are listening. I'm just
I am going to type it in here. I just typed it in the chat so you can see it.
So for those of you that are listening, it's joemonkman@gmail.com. And you can get the spelling of his name from the description of this episode. But it is as it sounds. joemonkman@gmail.com.
My website, maybe never to return. I don't know. Maybe I need to talk to Daniel about who's designing your website.
I designed my own website. One of the other speakers actually reached out to me and said, can you design a website for me? And so we're talking about that. So if you want me to play with your website, Joe, let me know. We can talk about it. But so for those of you that are listening, again, if you look at the description that's going to be in whatever platform you're listening to this, have it be the Channeling Spirit website or have it be a podcast or YouTube, you will see a link that I will share there to reach out to Joe, which is his Facebook account. Again, because I don't like putting emails on public sites to protect.
And if you send me a message, if we're not friends on Facebook, sometimes if when people send me friend requests on Facebook and I don't see that they're connected to anybody I know, I don't accept that, because there's a lot of wackadoodle stuff that people do when you friend them and they're not really connected to anything except some people who do weird things. But yeah, and if you send me a Facebook message, please let me know that you're coming through this program, through this series. Saying something like, hi, it's I don't know who you are. It doesn't clarify.
So
yeah.
To simplify, Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit, we typically use the acronym CSVS for pretty much anything and everything. So just let Joe know that you came across him in this platform and you're reaching out to him.
Yes, like last fall when Sharon got in touch with me, she sent me the most clear email. It was like, yes,
beautiful.
I understand immediately. So yes, thanks, Sharon.
Beautiful. So guys, thank you very much for being here with us. Joe, thank you as always for sharing.
Thank you. I love having these conversations. I love these collaborations, Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely, a lot of fun. And so for those of you that are going to be with us for the next session, it's going to be with, Dennis Miranda. He's a medium. So Shannon Johnson, a number of seasons ago, said, hey, you should bring a medium. And I was like, I would love to do that. And so I had some space. This is in half an hour.
Okay.
And so I reached out to Shannon and I said, hey, do you know a good medium? And so she introduced me to Dennis. He lives in Australia. And so I'm excited to have this conversation because mediumship is another form of channeling. And some people, he loves the work that he does. I personally, I'm looking forward to having a mediumship type experience, but that doesn't call to me. I'm more interested in channeling Yeshua and, the archangels and connecting with my team, my pack, as I call them, and messages from beyond, as opposed to connecting with the husband of a friend of mine that just passed away. I'm happy to do that if and when I'm able to do that, but that just doesn't call to me. Dennis, on the other hand, that kind of work excites him. And so I'm really excited to have him join us. So that's going to be in 30 minutes. For those of you that have been with us here with Joe, thank you, Joe, as always, for everything. I'm just going to say one more thing and then I'll turn it over to you. If you enjoyed Joe's approach and his energy, you resonated with him, please reach out to him. If you like the way that I speak, that I describe things, and you like the way that I work, again, the easiest way to work with me is the membership community that's attached to this platform. On the website, there's a link that says play. There's a membership. We get together once a week to talk about these kinds of things. Sometimes I channel, sometimes, most of the time I don't, but we talk about these kinds of conversations every single week. And it's entirely flexible and open to whatever you bring forward. That's the direction that we go. So it's kind of a Q&A style conversation, all focused on helping to integrate your spiritual expansion with your human experience, bringing your human along your spiritual expansion. That's a lot of the foundation of the work that I do. And this is a plug for Joe. I've invited him to be a part of this community. And so he has an invitation to come and play with us as well, not only to play with the community, but also to connect with the community to help him expand and to help him be in a position of support and healing. Because a lot of us, myself included, we oftentimes forget to take care of ourselves. And so I wanted to create a community that supports both the people that are doing the work with others, as well as the people that are looking to grow within themselves. And so the community is a hybrid of both. And so he has an open invitation. Come join us, Joe. I know that we all have busy lives and he's got his own life to deal with. And so, but invitation is there, Joe, to come and play with us as you wish, as is the invitation for everyone that's listening. more than happy to have you come and play with us as well. So Joe, there was something that you wanted to say?
I don't know. I don't remember now.
Sorry.
I'm taking
Sorry for kind of hijacking your thought.
No.
I should have let you say it.
I don't even know what the heck it was going to be.
So for now, we will say our farewells. Joe, thank you for being here. Looking forward to having you in a couple seasons if our schedules align again.
So if I want to come on at 5 Eastern time, do I just click back into this same link?
No, it'll be a different link. So I sent you an email probably about a week ago with all of the speakers and the links, if you can find it there. If not, let me make it simple for you. Miranda. Okay. All right. So sorry guys that are still in the recording. I haven't dropped out the recording. That's going to be the link going forward.
Okay.
So obviously if you click it now, it's going to tell you that another meeting is in progress.
Yes, I'm copying it.
But you can copy it out from there. Sorry guys that are still listening. I know that I'm still recording, and so you guys are listening to our anyway. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here as always, Joe. For those of you that are listening, thank you for joining us along the journey. For those of you that are live, we appreciate you being here and interacting and playing with us. For those of you listening to the recordings, have it be the replay or afterwards, again, just a reminder, this is as much created by you and for you as it is those that are here present. There is no distinction in time. This is all happening collectively. Your higher selves and your teams are collaborating in this conversation, knowing that at some point in time, you will be listening and interacting with this. So this is as much for you as anyone else. I like to remind us of that because sometimes we forget when we listen to the recordings that, oh, they're talking about the people that are live. That doesn't pertain to me. And actually it does. It pertains very much to you. So until next time, I'll leave you with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love. I will see you guys in a little bit less than 30 minutes. Lots of love to you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you for being part of this incredible experience. We hope that this session has inspired a new level of understanding within you, allowing you to expand more easily into the essence of your true self and become an even more powerful alchemist in your own life. We invite you to listen to the session again and again in order to go deeper each time and expand even more. Have it be via the replays or the unlimited access package. If you have enjoyed being part of this event, we invite you to tell your friends so that they can join us in the future. We are grateful that you are here, and we thank you for co-creating this experience with us. Until next time, we leave you with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love.